Morning, Ron.
Good morning.
Morning.
Morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. It's now 9:30 and Kevin is on now. Good. And been advised that we do have our quorum, so we'll call the Strathcona Regional District First Nations Relations Committee meeting for November 17th, 2021 to order. And first is the adoption of the public agenda.
Move adoption.
Moved.
Thank you. Is there anything to add to the agenda? Hearing nothing from the directors, I have two short items. One is regarding the Clean Energy BC and the new relationship trust with the First Nations Energy Summit. And the other is with the Comox Strathcona Regional Hospital District and potential inclusion of First Nations health authorities. So 2 items to add. So if we can have a motion as amended, that would be good.
Move as amended.
Moved.
Thank you. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, motion passes. No petitions or delegations. Adoptions of the previous meeting minutes.
Move adoption.
Second.
Oh, thank you. Any discussion or business arising? Then we move to, thank you. Sorry, I got to get used to the different format and being in person. So on adoption, is there anyone opposed? Motion carries. Business arising. Any business? Seeing none. Chair's report. Nothing specific to report other than 2 items that were added that we'll get into later. So staff reports. Item 1, the business case for the First Nations coordinator position.
Move receipt, Abram.
Second, Moglove.
Thank you. Turn it over to our CAO.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So in line with a budget report and calendar that we received in late August, September, staff have identified to all the committees, commissions, and board that if we have requests that go beyond the basis budget, that we would bring a business case to support what we feel is important to go beyond the existing budget and request endorsement from the committee that we explain what we would like and the financial implications of that. If the committee supports that, what would we do is put that into the draft budget that you'll see in late January, and then you can make an objective decision on once you see the tangible financial impact, if any, that it has, and you have the opportunity at that point to say, okay, let's carry forward, or I think that's financially too much. So in line with that, then Renee and Tina have a bit of a short report presentation, and happy to answer any questions at the end of that.
Okay, thank you. So Renee or Tina, who's going to lead our presentation?
It'll be me, Renee. Good morning, Chair Cornfield and directors. Is the screen share working okay? Does everybody see? Okay, perfect. The request before you today is to increase the capacity of the First Nations coordinator from a part-time role to a full-time role. So the part-time coordinator started early in 2021 at 21 hours per week, and since that time has made some significant progress On the First Nations Relations Committee goals, they are mostly completed or scheduled to be completed. We've had outreach and engagement with all 10 First Nations in the area. We anticipate that this increased engagement at both the elected official and staff level will lead to new initiatives, which will require higher level of staff resources to carry out. The knowledge sharing resources and guidance that Tina has helped us or provides has helped us engage on a variety of SRD projects and has also increased cultural awareness of staff and elected officials. We have the territorial acknowledgement policy that's before you today. And cultural competency has already increased within the region as a result of 5 different training events that were hosted this fall. There was participation from SRD, the Comox Strathcona Waste Management, and regional municipality staff. And they were all very well received and really good feedback on those. So the primary role of the First Nations coordinator is to support the goals of the First Nations Relations Committee. And in addition to advancing the goals of the First Nations Relations Committee, the First Nations coordinator can assist with outreach to the First Nations for a number of projects. We've already had some success reaching out regarding the Recreate project and the Connected Coast project. A consistent person to liaise with the First Nations can also help identify synergies, build consistent communication, and improves the SRD's ability to implement strategies and projects as they are identified. Earlier this year, the committee approved a short-term arrangement with the Comox Strathcona Waste Management Service to support First Nation relation building and advice on protocols. This work began this fall, and the CSWM has submitted a budget request for the equivalent of 1 day per week to support First Nation relationship building and cultural competency. The Connected Coast project requires significant outreach not only to the regional First Nations, but to 48 First Nations who will be impacted by the project. Ongoing communication will be critical to the long-term success of the project, and the Connected Coast budget can support the equivalent of 1 day per week. The overarching goal to move from 21 hours a week to 35 hours per week is to establish and maintain relationships with 10 different First Nations, explore mutual beneficial partnerships, and eventually facilitate participation in SRD services. Relationship building is a long-term process. It requires significant time to develop and maintain. The required funds will be sourced from the Comox Strathcona Waste Management Service budget and the Connected Coast project budget. The objective of this business case is to add capacity to an existing part-time position, to create a full-time position to ensure that the required resources are available to support the goals of this committee, and most importantly, help the SRD respond and implement the Truth and Reconciliation Commission calls to action and other reconciliation efforts. So our recommendation is that the draft financial plan include the additional $36,452 to fund the First Nations coordinator position to full-time capacity.
Good, thank you, Renee. And discussion, any questions?
Yeah, I've got one, Charlie.
Thank you, Director Abram. Go ahead.
Yeah, just one question, Renee, on the Comox Solid Waste Management Committee or whatever end of it. That amount of money, will there be any cost sharing with the Comox Valley Regional District on that?
It'll be coming from the Comox Strathcona Waste Management budget.
So yes.
Okay, that's the answer I was looking for. Thanks very much.
Okay, any further questions from the board? Seeing none, we have a receipt motion, so if there's no further questions on receipt, is there anyone opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. And the recommendation, please.
I'll move the recommendation. Moglove?
Okay, seconder
Second,
from
Davis.
Julie Colburn, Director Colburn. Discussion? I just want to add that thanks for the report and thanks for the funding breakdown. I think it's simple, straightforward, well done. Thank you. So on the recommendation, anyone opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Move on to item 2, the First Nations territorial acknowledgement policies, or sorry, acknowledgements policy.
Move receipt.
Second, Moglove?
Thank you. And over to the CAO.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, based on the discussion we had at the previous First Nations committee meeting, there was a lot of discussion. Renee, Tina took a lot of notes. Tina continued to do her outreach with the other First Nations. I did a couple things. I think it was important to bring it back to this committee. We had a lot of great discussion. I wanted to bring those amendments back. And I've also included the attachment here that has the acknowledgements and the pronunciations and whatnot attached to the policy. I thought it was important that it also be a part of it. So hopefully everyone had a chance to go through it, and we've made those amendments, but happy to take any questions on those amendments we've made and comments on what the group thinks the acknowledgement policy looks like at this point. The other reason I brought it back to this committee first is there was some discussion, I know, about the acknowledgements on the board. A few board members had approached me in terms of the acknowledgements and what they said, but I thought it was appropriate that it come from the committee, because when it comes to the board, I think it's important that the committee members, if they support this policy, they speak to it. So again, it's here. We're happy to answer any questions on the input that you provided and the additional outreach that Tina's done to the First Nations. Maybe Tina can speak to the response. I know she didn't get 100% response the first time. She reached out again, and I think she's got further response, but not 100% from all the nations.
Okay, Tina, do you want to add any comments?
Yeah, thank you, CAO, to the chair, to the committee. So with all the recommendations that were made, there were changes that were made accordingly. There's still some outstanding responses that I am waiting for from First Nations in regards to some of the recommendations. So this will be a living document until I can get confirmation from the First Nations on their approval, or from their approval.
Super, thank you. Anything further from staff? Questions from our committee? Director Abram.
Thank you, Chair Cornfield. I just wondered if staff, probably being Tom, you could just email us the one page, the one that has all the colors on it, in the attachment, that actually shows the different First Nations and the acknowledgement and the pronunciation. If you could just email that to us so we can print it, because if I go to print it, I have to print the whole report. Is that a possibility?
Okay, staff are just looking quizzically, but I think your last one says it when I went to print it out, you end up having to print 9 or 10 pages. And so if it was a separate email, then it makes it a lot easier. And I know I found that table particularly useful. So I think staff are nodding the head that yes, they can do that. And I would suggest that it goes out to all our committee members.
That would be great. And I do appreciate the pronunciation being stuck in there, because where was it? Kwakwa Kiwak. It's one I have never been able to be able to say easily. So now I can. Thank you very much, Tina.
Okay. Anything further from the board? Not seeing any hands up. Nobody's waving at me or gesticulating wildly. Yes, I know we're still on receipt. I just want to say that I found it a very useful report, and in fact, I've circulated it to one First Nation in the Lower Island and to people that are involved in organizing events, and they found it extremely useful. Kevin, did you have any comments on it?
Hey there, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. No, I didn't have any comments on it. I thought it was awesome and definitely a great piece of work.
Super, thank you.
Thank
Okay.
you.
So on receipt, there's nothing further. Is there anyone in opposition? Seeing none, the motion passes and the recommendation B.
I'll move the recommendation. Mobley.
Thank you.
Second. Second. Davis.
Second by,
Davis?
thank you, Director Davis. Any discussion on the recommendation? Seeing none, we'll call the question. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing no opposition, the motion carries. And no correspondence, directors' reports. Anything to report from the directors? Nothing? New business, I guess, is that where it would come? So I have two items. We received, at least I received email about Clean Energy BC and the New Relationship Trust hosting a First Nations Energy Summit. In the attachment, in the letter, it spoke to a First Nations Power Authority, which is something I was not familiar with at all, and I thought it was important to bring it to the board committee, and maybe we could have our staff come back with a report if they know what's going on, or whether this is a result of or looking to be a result of the summit, or whether or not there's sort of what is its status. And I brought the email, which will get forwarded out. I talked to Edith, and you'll distribute it to committee members following the meeting with the minutes. And so it's just an item, a simple one. And the other one makes reference to the hospital district strategic item on tomorrow's agenda, which includes a proposal to expand the small communities to include a number of First Nations villages and the First Nations health authorities. So that's the other one that was just an item of information that we can maybe refer to staff and get a report back on how that would impact what we do. Director Abram.
Yeah, thank you, Director Cornfield, Chair Cornfield. So on your first item, I've got one point on both items. On the first item, you're talking about it as it's going to be a discussion, et cetera, summit of some sort, and to bring back a report on it. I don't know if we're both talking about the same release, but I got an email from the province, which was a press release. And the press release basically said it was a done deal, that they're going to move forward with this power authority. And it's going to be sort of a separate power authority from, we see hydro, running parallel or whatever. The very few details about what it actually was, other than, you know, quotes from 6 different people saying what a great thing this was. The concern that I have is that it's talking about renewable energy, and in Area C, we've had, let's see, since 2008, we have been dealing with renewable energy in the way of run-of-the-river IPPs, independent power projects. And the general consensus, province-wide, is we do not want to see the rivers such as, I'll just give you a couple examples, the Toba, the Homathko, the Southgate, those rivers which are major feeders to our inlets and our fish. We do not want to see them developed into power. And they've been tried by, the first one was General Electric and Plutonic, 17 proposals on 17 rivers to produce power. And the only one that got through was in the Powell River Regional District, because it was outside of our area. And, you know, they did 400 kilometers of 300-meter wide linear clear cut to run a hydro line to, I guess it's around Lund where it goes in. And it was coming from one independent power project, which supposedly clean energy. It's not clean energy, and it's not considered clean energy in the definitions by either the province or by the states that we sell to, such as California. They will not buy that power. So I don't want to see us have to go back. You know, we did it. We had to go back with another applicant in 2018, a person from outside of Canada trying to rejuvenate that project of 17, which was defeated by the NDP, by the way. And their policy right now is that there will be no call for power, nor will there be any run-of-the-river independent power projects. So I don't want to see this, you know, this new entity being encouraged to drive that sort of development in our rural areas that feed all of us, not just the rural areas, but you know, our fisheries and all of our wildlife and our environment, especially at a time when, you know, we're just facing one devastating event after another of different sorts. So I do have some questions about it, and I'd sure like to know where the process actually sits right now. Usually a press release is not released by the province until something's a done deal. And this was a definite press release. I can send it in if you'd like to be shared with the committee or with the board. I just got it yesterday. So that would be my comments on that one. I'm not in favor of it. Unless it's something like what was done with Homalco up in Butte Inlet at Orford River, where they, you know, did a small independent power project to power that particular camp, which is a tourist destination, bear watching, etc. That's a different story, and
Okay.
that's totally, you know, for.
So,
Okay, so I'll move on to the other one if I could, please.
well, I'll come back. How about I come back to you, Jim, because
Sure. I
it would
just
be
want to
nice
talk about this one.
if I could get you to move a motion to refer this item to staff for a further report on the status and outline. And if you could send in, I don't have the press release. I got an email about.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. Is there a seconder?
Second that, Davis.
Thank you, Director Davis. So any further discussion on it? I mean, I know it's hard because we don't have all the information. Sorry. Oh, sorry, Julie. Director Colburn?
So that was kind of going to be my, I have a hard time voting on a motion where I don't even have any of the information in front of me. I'm just wondering about the timeliness of this. If we could add it to our next meeting and discuss it there. I don't know that we, if it is a press release, if it is a done deal, I don't think that a report needs to be come back necessarily, just an answer. But I do have a hard time voting on anything that's not, that I don't have the information for. So just thanks for that.
Okay, yeah, I think that's the whole point, is that we don't have all the information. And if staff could come back with a status, or at least that was my understanding of what Director Abram was asking about, that way we can provide the information. Right now, we don't know what there is or what's going on, and if staff can just do a simple status check on what's going on and bring it back to the next committee meeting. So we're not really voting on anything other than to ask for clarification. Okay. Director Davis?
Yeah, thanks. Basically, I just have the same questions too. I want more information. I'm curious to see if there's going to be new investments or if this is just an administrative tool for projects that are already operational, that sort of thing. So yeah, I'm looking forward to some kind of answers to those questions.
If I may,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Chair?
Yes, Director Abram?
Okay, so I just sent it to Dave Leach for ease of doing it quickly. So Dave has now received the news release from the province, or he should have received it by now, to be distributed to the committee and the board, I guess, if that's your wish. But Dave will be your contact point because he's got it.
Okay. Like the
That's the
motion.
actual release.
Yeah, the motion was for staff to come back with information, so unless you want it referred to the board as a whole, but if they turn around and send it back to First Nations, just adds an extra step. And I thought if it came up here. So,
I think that the members of the First Nations Committee, a couple of them anyway, have, just like Julie and Martin, have both asked for more information. Well,
right.
What I'm doing is sending the information that staff are going to be researching. So.
Right. No, and it's appreciated. Thank you. Any further? Oh, Director Moglove.
Thanks. I just want to make sure, what are we voting on? Has to do with the First Nations Energy Summit?
Yeah, and the First Nations Power Authority.
So all we're asking for is a little bit of information what this is all about, even though there's nothing in front of us. There's been no.
Correct.
I mean, we received it. We did receive an email at the City Council on Monday night.
Right.
But it hasn't arrived here to the SRD, so I'm not really sure why we would be doing anything about it at this point, seeing how it hasn't arrived to the SRD.
I put it
in any
on
way, shape, or form.
if I can, I put it on the agenda as an added item just for information. And because I thought if the government is going in this track of creating it, it would be important for us to know what they're doing so that we know how we fit in with it. And thought it would be as an important piece of information for the committee. And so this is just the very basic information of, I don't have the press release. Jim got it yesterday. We got our email at City Council in our open agenda, which is why I brought it here and just said, hey, there's this going on, and let's ask our staff for a simple update on what's happening.
Okay.
If it has no impact on us, then staff can come back and say, yep. in which case we've taken care of it. If they come back and say, well, this is what's going on, and the committee can decide what to do with it after that. Okay, any further questions on the motion to request a staff update on the item? If there's nothing further on the motion, is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Director Abram? You had a second item?
How did you know? Yes, I just put my hand up again. Your second item was about the rural community issue at the CSRHD. Is that the one you were talking about?
That's correct.
Okay, so there were 3 items in that report that we're going to consider tomorrow.
Right.
And the middle item, number 2, had to do with rural communities. It wasn't real specific on what that meant, but it was talking about the sort of outliers as opposed to, the Comox Valley and Campbell River area. So I'm not sure what your motion or your info item is about. I know that if you look at your agendas closely for tomorrow, you will see that the recommendation that's being made is being made on, if you take points 1, 2, and 3, 1 being Comox Valley, number 2 being rural areas, number 3 being, I believe, let's just call it Campbell River centric. Item 2 is being totally left out of the recommendation, which is, I believe, the item that you're talking about right now. Somehow enhancing rural and outlying communities. So I think everybody should have a close look at their agenda under I guess that's under the strategic planning summary. It's all under that section, and it's separated quite nicely into 3 sort of bullet points. So if we're going to do 2 of them, why aren't we doing 3? Because there's been no discussion on whether we should do any of them, 1 of them, 2 of them, or 3 of them. So anyway, something for you to do in your homework tonight. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome. It had to do with attachment B, option 1, that it increases the grant money, but it also expands it. And the reason I thought it was important to bring it up here at First Nations Relations, because it looks for, or at adding the Weewakam and the Weewakai First Nations Health Center and the KDC Health Center. That's the Kwakiutl District Council. The Klahoose First Nation Health Center, Homolko First Nation Health Center, the Lakwata Family Life Society, Comox First Nations Health, and I'm going to get this one probably wrong, but the Waichie, that one. WACHIA Friendship Center. Expanding the coverage to include all of those. One that I didn't see was our Cayucit Checklisset, and whether or not they have health services out there that could use the support. So anyway, because it included a number of First Nations items, I thought it was important at least to bring it up and discuss and maybe ask some questions at tomorrow's meeting. That was my purpose of putting it on the agenda anyway. just simply a discussion point. Any comments? Director Moglove, you're looking quizzical.
No, just waiting to move termination.
Okay. Director Abram?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you for actually bringing that up at this meeting so that our directors here who could be very involved in all of those that you just named will have the information before them when they get into the meeting tomorrow, because it is important to find out what the methodology is on the hospital board and how they pick these things and how they're going to act on them. So thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome. Through to our, just before we move termination through to our CAO, is that an item that our First Nations coordinator would look at? Pros and cons of expanding the mandate?
Expanding the mandate of,
The hospital board to include those First Nations.
I think it's a conversation certainly that we can have with Comox, with staff, I would say, with Russell. We don't sit on that.
No.
But I think it's a conversation certainly we can have. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll leave it as is and we'll get more information tomorrow and then we can let you or Tina know. Okay, thank you. So just a motion on, I guess it's the verbal item, just on receipt of the discussion.
Move receipt, Abram.
Thank you. Second? Martin?
Sure.
Thank you. If there's nothing further, is anyone opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Director Moglove?
Move termination.
Second.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. Any in opposition? Thank you very much, everyone, for your participation, and we'll see most of you tomorrow. Take care.
Okay.
Actually, we'll see most of you soon.
Yes.
Half an hour.
Yeah, no,
Don't forget
15
MSC
minutes
can-
or so, right?
Or
Yeah.
Okay.